And I'm spending 4 years at university. And I come out and no experience. What am I going to do?
I think for the graduate student, it's going to be very tough. It's going to be very competitive, and it's going to be a very rough year for them.
However, the other side of the coin, and I think this should be emphasized, is that always the university graduate, the extra education which he has acquired, the broader background that he has, is going to make him a better bet in the job market.
Every year, nearly 100,000 students graduate from Canadian universities. 100,000 young men and women, mostly looking for their first permanent job. Both students and society have made a commitment to higher education, to advancing their skills. It costs the students a lot of money. It costs society a lot, too. Some enter the job market knowing exactly where they want to go. Others have little idea. That's okay when there's a flourishing job market, but not in this year, 1982. Maggie is 24. She entered university in Alberta, dropped out after a year, then went back to an Ontario university in a co-op program. She'll graduate with a BA in English.
I always have had a plan. I've always had a job planned 3 or 4 years in advance. I'm beginning to wonder or question the value of a permanent job in terms of the way, you know, society is going so fast, and it's sort of like last week when I was writing my final exams and studying for them just before the Argentine Falkland Island crisis. I thought, well, why commit myself seriously to something? I mean, look what could happen. I mean, it could all, like the state of affairs in the world right now, I think is very volatile, and I wonder whether in my lifetime I might be wiser to experience different types of jobs and just experience different places to live. Because I think that the trend of going and getting a permanent job and working somewhere for 25 years is just not as rewarding as it was. I mean, you're just not going to get what you used to get out of that. I want to really think about what I want to do. I want to really make a thinking decision about where I want, what city I want to live in, whereabouts in Canada I want to live in, what kind of work.
It's been worth it. It's been very worth it. I've enjoyed myself while I was at university. I've gained a lot of knowledge that had I not gone to university, I would never have gained.
Steve is 24 and will graduate with a BA in geology. He is one of a small group of graduates whose skills have been much in demand in recent years.
The way I relate to the world has changed, I think, but the perception hasn't changed. When I just came out of high school, I guess I was a bit of a nonconformist. I thought it was cool. Now it's just ridiculous to think like that. Because being a nonconformist is not helping you at all. And one person's not going to change society, although it has happened in the past. But that's not going to happen nowadays. People are just too wary of change.
I like to think that I'm going to change things. I think it's being naive. I don't know if I'm going to actually try to battle the system and change the system. I think that would do me in a lot faster. If I can get in and do my own little thing and make a difference for a few individuals, and that's what I'm there for.
Elaine is 24. She'll graduate with an honors BA in psychology and a Bachelor of Education. She wants to teach. She's a student who believes in participating in university life. With a mixture of idealism and youthful drive, she was on the student council and was an active advisor to the university president's committee on sexual harassment by faculty. Part of her final year includes 1 day a week teaching grade 1 in a local school, but her ultimate goal is unusual.
It weighed about 30,000. I've always just had a very sincere interest in corrections. I hope to teach in a prison when I graduate, and going through the Faculty of Ed, I've also found that I really enjoy teaching, and that's just one way of combining those two interests. I guess it is unusual, but I'm used to doing unusual things, that for me it doesn't seem unusual. But judging by the reaction I get from other people, it must be.
You're quite an activist, aren't you?
I don't like that word.
All right. Well, what word would you use?
I have strong beliefs, and I stand up for those beliefs. And I'll help fight for them. I guess that makes me an activist, but...
Elaine has few illusions about the challenge facing her in the job market. Demand for teachers has fallen dramatically. Slowing population growth has hit her profession hard. Economic recession has forced cutbacks in the correctional system, too. There's a somber mood among graduates.
I think economically, the situation has changed. The kids are forced to study more, and strive for higher grades, and to get the job when they get out. And so things like sports and student politics and clubs and organizations are just go by the wayside. I've learned so much from being on student council that it's too bad more people haven't taken advantage of it. The administration is happy to see that there aren't a lot of student radicals, I think. Makes their job a lot easier.
Elaine is the sixth of 7 children in her family, all of whom have attended university. Her parents could and did encourage her, but they couldn't help financially. We asked her mother if that put any kind of pressure on her and her husband.
Not the kind of pressure that would lead me to what Betty Friedan. I didn't read The Feminine Mystique, but I heard a lot about it and heard it quoted. And at one point, she said that women had to be liberated. For one thing, they have very boring children. And that just wasn't so as far as I was concerned. Never did I find my children boring. Sure, I was times physically exhausted and stressed. There wasn't enough money. But I don't think the kids felt that.
It's a struggle for some kids, definitely. And these past couple of years, it's been more of a struggle for me. It's all part of the whole university trip. It's a lot of people are also in the same boat, so you can sort of laugh about it together, but you always find enough money to go to the pubs, I think. Even if you don't get to eat, there's money to be found.
Elaine?
Hi.
Hi, Debbie Kemp. Nice to meet you. We've got a meeting room up.
Long before final exams, the job hunt is on. Employers appear on campuses to conduct job interviews, sometimes as soon as the term begins. In recent years, competition by employers for some students has been so keen that it's bid up starting salaries. It began like that in the fall of 1981, but by the spring of '82, it was apparent that this was going to be a very different year. Elaine's first batch of resumes got a sympathetic response from Alberta. The federal corrections system needed teachers. An education executive from Calgary was in Toronto and gave Elaine her first job interview.
Have you been involved at all with prison education?
Yes, last summer I did volunteer work at the Ontario Correctional Institute in what's called their BLADE program, Basic Literacy for Adult Development.
May I help you?
Yes, it's Elaine Hicks to work with Frank McConville in the BLADE program.
Come in, please.
Thank you.
To get that all-important job-related experience, Elaine volunteered for teaching assignments in prisons during both of her final 2 years in university. Projects exist to upgrade the education and employable skills of prisoners. On this day, Elaine's job was to teach basic literacy. First-hand exposure to the correctional system didn't lessen her determination to teach there full-time, or her conviction that the system should somehow be changed.
That's just a comment. There's no sincere caring for the individual inmate while he's in there or while he gets out. He's put back in society with one hell of a stigma. No hope of getting a job if he's going to be honest. So he's right away forced to revert back to lying if he's going to try and make it, which is a whole contradiction.
Being available to go out there, we are putting together a selection committee for sort of the semi-final interview
would you be willing to come out to Calgary?
Definitely.
3,000 kilometers away in Alberta's Badlands is the federal correctional facility at Drumheller. In these stark surroundings, Elaine had her first major job interview. She was one of a small number of candidates that day. Elaine has come a long way for this opportunity, not just the hours by plane, but the years of preparation and planning. Rejection would be hard to take. How'd it go?
Fairly well, I think. It's really difficult to tell with those types of interviews, but I was pleased with it.
What kind of things did they want to know?
I think basically if I was ready for this type of environment, how I would handle certain situations, how I would feel teaching under the types of pressures that they have, and just if I was ready for it, I think.
What's your answer to that?
I wouldn't be here if I wasn't ready for it. Well, that's basically what I told them.
Well, I just found out recently that I didn't receive the position, and disappointed, but my family was happy that I'm not going out, so it made it easier to take it. But, the usual form letter, thank you for applying, and all the rest of it. But they mentioned that they were impressed with my background and presentation, so that was nice.
Began to look at the impact.
Many professions have long been considered recession-proof, medicine and law, for example. And it's a long time since a degree in geology wasn't an automatic job getter as well.
There's a lot of companies I really wanted to work for, and I was expecting to get offers from them, and they didn't come through. As you know, budget cuts and the economic depression or recession that we're in. I've had I don't know how many interviews now, close to 15 to 20 interviews, maybe that many. I'm not sure. Since all the companies are doing budget cuts, they're cut down on their hiring. In my graduating class, there are only 4 people that have permanent jobs. Quite a, I don't know, 7 or 8 have yet to hear from a lot of companies such as myself, and the rest have just summer employment.
4 out of how many?
4 out of 21, I think, are leaving this year, graduating this year. Will be finished. And those 4 are all with oil companies, which aren't feeling the pinch as much as the mining companies, because the metals are so down this year.
Every spring, Canada's mining prospectors and developers gather in Toronto for their annual convention. Steve and other students take the opportunity to meet with potential employers. It's a gutsy move, but in 1982, mining is a thoroughly depressed industry with no recovery in sight.
Hi, how's the job search going?
Not too well.
No? You haven't heard of anyone that's hiring at all?
No. No one's hiring.
It's the same sad tale. Recession hits at all levels.
How about yourself?
No, I haven't found anyone. There's a couple, actually, I have found one guy that might be hiring through a rumor, so I'm going to talk to him later. Yeah, they're pretty standard. They say, for instance, this company here has decreased its exploration budget and is shifting its emphasis from exploration to acquisition of mineral properties, which they don't do work on. They just acquire these properties. And this other company here says, we regret to inform you that due to current economic conditions, we are unable to hire field assistants for the coming season. You know, you get a lot of those kind of letters where, I'm sorry, because of budget cutbacks and because of economic times, that this year they won't be doing nearly as much work as they had hoped to do. One of the biggest surprises was that they were so late in replying. You know, we had these interviews back in, a lot of interviews back in October and November, and even September, and they're just getting to replying, you know, now in February, March, very late this year.
As the spring term ends, thousands of students flood the job market. For university students, the summer months are vital in getting job-related experience, as well as enough money to go back to classes in the fall. But this year, fewer graduating students are getting permanent jobs, so many of them are looking for summer jobs as well. And in a stagnant economy, that spells trouble. This manpower office in Toronto is bigger than most, but its problems are typical. Where do the job offers come from?
Private sector jobs would account for approximately 90% of the jobs that are offered to students in the summer.
That's this year in 1982. How was it in 1981?
Slightly slightly up this year in terms of public sector jobs over last year. More money has been given to the Summer Canada projects this year.
The indicators are ominous. Governments recognize a worsening situation and are responding with public money. The effects of the deepening recession create a double dilemma for university students. Faced with sharply increased tuition fees and inflation, they must earn more to continue at college.
I was looking for experience, but now I'm just anything that can get me back to school. I'm still being partially supported by my parents, so I don't need as much. But it has to work out to, at the bare minimum, about $6.50 an hour, I'd say.
Right now, it seems like I'll almost take anything. You know, like I even take a big cut in salary just to work.
If you work for minimum wage all summer, you really don't have enough to, especially if you're living on your own, to pay rent and food for the summer and then pay tuition in the fall. You have to still expect to work part-time in the fall. That's really hard if you're carrying a course load.
I think initially they come into the labor market and they are not prepared, and I'm speaking generally now, but they are not prepared to accept a minimum wage job unless it's as a waiter or waitress, where they know that there are tips that are going to be on top of that. But I think after a period of time, when they realize they are not going to get a job at the salary level that they want, that they do lower their expectations somewhat and they will take a job.
Is that perhaps something new for 82?
I think it's more evident in 82 than it has been in the past. I think the numbers, yes, will increase this year.
Does that sadden you?
Yes. I think it's really sad, and I think it's really sad if, in fact, the kids cannot go back to school. I think that's a tragedy.
Tragic indeed. Steve and a classmate were able to get a temporary job after final exams were over, surveying for gold in a northern Ontario lake. The work was directly related to their training and lasted for 10 weeks. Then the company folded. Steve began looking elsewhere for temporary work. The promise of summer changes the mood on most campuses. The principal academic year is over, and convocations lie ahead. But for too many in the class of 82, a question mark hangs over the system. There's been a gradual loss of real income in many professions since the late 60s, and in 1982, with the economy in disarray, the level of unemployment is highest in the memory of most Canadians. Demand has dropped for teachers, lawyers, engineers, geologists, and many others. Most university faculty are over 45. Too little new blood is being infused into the system. No one is particularly to blame, but the dilemma has to be recognized and the challenge met head-on.
Stephen Aaron Jarofsky.
Stephen, I bet you to your degree. Congratulations, too.
Thank you.
What are your plans now? Work or further study?
No, I'm going to work for a while, and then maybe studies.
Well, all the best of luck in your career.
Thank you.
Convocation is an emotional experience for most graduates. Years of demanding study come down to this one moment. If pride is a sin, perhaps it can be forgiven at this time for both student and parent. This year, more than most, the job hunt continues with a vengeance. Careers are tantalizingly offered in campus employment centers. But employers are seeing a situation few of them have seen before.
Certainly compared to the last 3 years, it's a depressing year to be somebody looking for a job. Our usual recruiting objective for management positions or training programs would average between 140 to 180 vacancies in each year. Depending on the actual conditions in the market, we could see as many as 2,000 applicants to try to fill those vacancies.
In many instances this year, that ratio of 10 to 1 has increased dramatically, and it's no longer just recent graduates in the lineup either. Now there are qualified women and men with years of experience also looking for work. In the past, there was a simple axiom: higher learning meant higher earning. Steve's father remembers.
When I graduated in business, no problem whatsoever in finding a job and selecting from maybe 15 to 20 various companies. In fact, when I graduated, I really intended to stay on next a year for my master's, but I got romanced, if you like, by one particular company and joined them.
Steve's mother only ever gave encouragement.
It was always my attitude to encourage my children to have as much education as they possibly could, and to use the talents that they had, you know, to really work, to apply themselves, and to go as far as they could.
We're in a slump right now, and I foresee the economy coming around. It'll probably be another year and a half, but it'll come back, and it'll come back fairly strong. And at that particular point, then the economy will be able to absorb the university graduates that are coming out.
My dad always likes a self-motivator. He says, you won't make it anywhere in the world unless you're a self-motivator, and that's what you have to be. Do what you want to do, but do it well, and do it right the first time.
If you don't.
And if you don't succeed.
Maggie completed her final exams and took off for a part-time job as a waitress in an Ontario resort town. She stayed with a family of a classmate to cut costs. Hers is not an unusual attitude.
I don't ever expect, I couldn't even imagine being financially better off than my father. And I think a lot of friends of mine, my age, are in the same way. You know, our parents that own a couple cars and a house and maybe a cottage, whatever, and they own the house and they have the cars paid off for. And I can't imagine, but of course my dad started doing that when he was 21. And I'm already 3 years behind that and probably 4, maybe 4.5 before I get serious again. And I'm also thinking I guess I'm not pissed off quite yet because, as I said, I've chosen to take this year off, so I can't really complain, right? I'm making my own bet. Is it, you know, depressions hopefully don't go on forever, you know? So I figure if I'm gonna take time off, I might as well do it now.
Maggie has paid her own way through college with a variety of jobs. Being a waitress is something she enjoys.
There's something satisfactory in going into a bar and it's totally disorganized, totally chaotic, and rendering some sort of order out of it and being able to go in and it's like physical labor. It's going in really fast, serving your drinks as fast as you can, as efficiently as you can, keeping your customers happy, 22 beer on your tray all night, running back and forth, and it gets you in good shape. That's another reason I like waitressing. You know, at the end of the night when you count out your tips, it's great. I'm not making a huge amount of money right now, to say the least. And sometimes I think about that. I think, gosh, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time in a bar. Because I mean, for having my degree and even the job experience I've had. But then I sort of remind myself, and then again, my father is being very supportive of this, because he says, don't rush into a job, which is what he did when he graduated. He said, you know, we're behind you 100% if you choose to take a year, 2 years off. You're lucky in this day and age that you can do that. You're not expected to rush out. You know, 20 years ago, that was sort of the social convention. And so I just sort of remind myself, well, that's, you know, I deserve it. I am eligible for POCI. I would probably make more money. I could probably get unemployment insurance right now saying I can't find a job with my English degree. I want a really specified job than I am right now working as a waitress. I choose not to. I couldn't stand not doing anything all the time. I would just feel guilty. It's just against my nature to take money for doing nothing. I watched the news a few weeks ago, and the union leader, Oshawa, was speaking. He was going, we want, you know, lifelong contracts and lifelong salaries, and we want this and we want that. And they're just not willing to recognize that they can't have it, no matter how much they may want it or what the government would like them to have.
Elaine, Steve, and Maggie, 3 young graduates with differing aspirations, but all facing a common dilemma. They entered university 3 to 5 years ago. Expectations were high. Jobs and political promises were plentiful. They leave university in 1982 as if they've passed through a time warp. The economy is in recession, jobs are scarce, and politicians aren't promising anything anymore. Students leave college with mixed emotions, pining for the university life, longing for a job. But in 1982, there's also an air of uncertainty about jobs and the beginnings of frustration. We talked to a group of graduating students on the West Coast.
Tens of thousands of us are going through university. It's a giant kind of paper chase. And unless we can achieve a good match between the paper we receive and the people we are, like if the person can come out as a helping person, a teacher, with a teaching degree, then he's going to have a much greater chance of a job. And that applies to business and everything else. Rather than people who have a degree that says they can do something, but maybe their person isn't as well matched to that piece of paper.
It could be the same thing with the business degree. Like, if we go out into the market, try and get a job, well, we've got to